Hi, welcome to the Unsecurity Podcast. We have conversations to give you insight and inspiration to elevate security efforts. We're your hosts. I'm Brad Nye.
And I'm Megan Larkins. On this podcast, we feature experienced InfoSec peers as we dissect major issues within the industry. Here's Unsecurity. Welcome back to another episode of Unsecurity. Today, Brad and I are joined by Pinky for another Breachmas season, or post-Breachmas season, I should say, a Breachmas recap. So
our annual Breachmas recap.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to hearing what Pinky has to share with us, although we certainly would have wished that none of them had happened. But it is the fact of the world, the incidents and kind of the method changing and increasing and evolving. So here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
So we need to start off with what are we doing outside of work for fun? I mentioned it last time. My kids know me very well. They got me a 2.5 foot tall space shuttle model foam puzzle. So that's what I've been doing.
That's super awesome. You been getting a chance to do anything fun between breaches, Pinky?
Fun's relative, but yeah, so the kids have gotten into video games over the last little bit. So been playing a lot of video games with kids, and that's fun. Getting to see them kind of just start enjoying that process and
anything in particular.
All right, don't judge me. But a little bit of Borderlands, because I love Borderlands, and you can turn the gore off. Okay. You can make it a little better, but they really enjoy it. But more realistically, I mean, they only play it a little bit, but a fair amount of Minecraft, because kids love the Minecraft. I mean, I love the Minecraft. But that, and then I've got a whole bunch of the Lego games. So we've got particularly the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings game they love. And I got them rolling on the Pirates of the Caribbean one, because that one's just a lot of fun. Nice. Because they captured Captain Jack Sparrow perfectly as a Lego. It's beautiful.
Those Lego games are, I think, underrated. They are.
Oh yeah.
Unabashedly fun.
Yeah,
they really are.
Multiplayer, so you can play with your kid, and yeah. They are good.
What about you, Megan?
I'm fresh off of our third D&D session with my family, so that's been fun. This is only my second official RPG tabletop, whatever you call it, kind of game. Because back in high school, I briefly did a Star Wars one with some of my brother's friends. It never went very far. I think I at least was in like 3 sessions and never understood it, but I'm also more of a fantasy and magic than a blasters and shooting and space battles kind of person. And we've been having a lot of fun. Our very first ones was like a year ago, so we had like a year break between sessions, but now we just did 2 recently. So my brother's been working hard at that, and we've been having a lot of fun. It was a blast. So getting into that, and enough so that I'm trying to put one together and learning how freaking hard it is. Because I picked up Root, the little animals, D&D kind of thing. They have Root, the board game, which I haven't played, even though I probably should, because I love board games, but Root, the RPG. But it doesn't come so much with pre-planned things that you can just pick up and go with. They do have a few clearings, which are kind of like the play that you can do. So I got a few of those recently, but it's a frick ton of work. I did the first one. My family surprised me. I was like, gosh, I have a lot more work to do. So I'm figuring that out. It's a journey, but a lot of fun. So
nice. So yeah, let's talk Breachmas.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, this was the first year I was so busy with like my other stuff. Usually I keep in touch with the IR team because that's where I came from. Those are my guys. I have no idea where you're at. I was so busy that I have no context this year of what you saw, what you were working on. So you want to start with just maybe a high level recap?
Yeah. So high level it's kind of interesting this year. In general, just all year long. Cases were a little slower than they were last year. To be fair, though, they were more normal. This was more of a normal year. Last year and the year before were insane. So it was pretty normal. So I was curious what was going to happen coming into the holidays. We hit Thanksgiving and we had a couple little things, we had a couple of things going on. But not a huge avalanche like I expect. Usually it's 2 weeks prior, right? About 2 weeks before Thanksgiving is when things really start to ramp up. We had a couple things right around there. And then it was quiet actually for about 2 weeks. And so it was a little bit of a delay this year. And then they kind of started hitting, right? So getting into early December, that kind of thing, we really started ramping up and just kind of had a lot come in. Pretty good mix. I'll kind of get into it a little bit as we keep going here, but pretty good mix of case types. But we did have, I will say this year was a little bit of a resurgence of ransomware. Whereas the last year, 2 years, it was a little more sporadic. We at one point in time over the last few months, we were kind of, we had like a full flip. We were like 80% ransomware internal compromise cases, 20% BECs. And normally that's the other way around. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting there on the high level.
And I'm assuming the ransomware is still more tending toward, we're going to expose your data rather than we're going to destroy your data, since that's been more effective.
Yeah, that's really where things have gone. Even some of the ones that I'm calling ransomware were just internal compromise cases. Like we knew there was compromise, we knew there was something going on, but nothing was encrypted. Or if it was a very small amount. Now, that's, as always, this is very anecdotal, right? I mean, we're a small team. Yeah. We're not getting a ton. But at least for us, that was a shift. And so we definitely saw more of the extortion stuff this year. Some even, like I said, just pure extortion, right? Just, hey, we got you. What do you want to do about it? Send us money for that kind of thing. So, yeah.
So not even always locking the organizations out of their own data, simply saying, we got in, we got your data. Now what are you going to do about it? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it certainly still happens. We still saw plenty of encryption, but it was just interesting to see even a couple of those that were just, hey, we got your data.
Yep.
We're holding that for ransom.
I'd sent you that one. I don't know if you saw it, that entire report on what they saw. And they said in 2025, from 2024 to 2025, credential access and account compromise rose 389%. IT help desk impersonation, 1,450%. So there's your direct send stuff, most likely, as Tim pointed out. And ransomware was up 250%. RMM, so the remote management, 143.
Yeah, so, definitely saw plenty of that, right? I mean, we've been seeing the RMM stuff for years. Like as weird as it is to say, we rarely see stuff like Cobalt Strike in attacks anymore. It's just, they just don't use it anymore. I mean, it's there. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people are using it, but it's just not, it's not the primary method anymore. I'll say, at least right now. Next week, that may change. For now.
Well, it's a known tactic method, right? As opposed to RMM are going to be well-known commercial tools that are expected to be seen in environments. So EDR isn't going to stop that. Yeah.
And that was kind of one of the bigger things. I mean, we know and I'm sure if we go back and look at Breachmas past and different times I've been on here over the years, we've talked about this a little bit, but we've really seen it start to take shape in that we're seeing. So for example, this past year, we saw a ton of Sonic Wall VPN compromises that led to either ransomware or theft and extortion. And so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think, I mean, realistically, I would say 80-90% of the internal compromise ransomware cases we saw this past year were either Sonic Wall VPN or another VPN, right? Let's compromise the VPN, come in quietly. A lot of times they weren't even using, I'll call it malware, but, just something else we would use if they were going to deploy anything. It would be some kind of RMM tool, something like that. We might catch an advanced IP scanner or something like that, because that's still really popular for attackers to use. But also a lot of IT teams use it. I mean, I know I used it for years. And so, but we did see a lot of that. at least on the internal compromise side, was just, hey, I'm going to hit the VPN, and then, oh, look, I've got RDP access, and I can remote desktop to things, and I'm just going to do my attack from here and never raise any red flags.
Yeah. Good reason, a good example of why we say you should be segmenting that VPN landing area with additional controls before you can get to your, core internal network. That would, make that a lot harder for them.
Yeah. And I know there's always a lot of pushback on like disabling RDP internally and things like that. And sure, you don't necessarily have to fully disable it, but hey, let's at least put some locks on the doors. Let's make it so that it's only our admins, or it's only, our admin accounts that belong to our admins. Best way to put it there. And let's not make that same account your VPN account, because if I'm an attacker and I get in that way, then I'm just rocking and rolling. And we saw a lot of that. So, it was makes those a lot harder to track too. I mean, it's just the nature of it, right? If we've got an IOC, a piece of malware, a hash or something like that we could track down, makes it a lot easier to go find everything, right? When we're just having to dig through remote desktop logs and see what we can find. And most of those are going to roll over and, things like that. So it becomes, it's a good attacker tactic. I mean, they've been really successful with it this year. And I think that's probably part of the reason we saw such a resurgence in those kind of attacks. There are other reasons, outside factors, but from a technical standpoint, there's that.
And another thing is that's where conditional access comes into play too, right? Like, and the pushback I've gotten is like, well, that's going to be so disruptive. No, because you already know what you have. Just allow what you have now and deny anything new.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. Don't overthink this.
No. And there's nothing more disruptive than an attack either. Yeah. So, you kind of got to think about it like that as well. If this is a really easy way in, let's just let's deal with the pain now, as opposed to when we're dealing with the pain and the news is knocking on the door and you've got, customers and clients that want to know what's going on and having to call in lawyers and PR people. And it's a whole thing, right? I mean, it's, these are never simple matters. It's always like super complex and you start to find out, teams like us, we investigate the attack, we figure that part of it out, but do you need e-discovery services to see if the, files have been, what files contain sensitive information? That's another specialized service for somebody else, there's just little things like that you don't think about. So take the early disruption, take the planned disruption.
Yep. Yeah. You can minimize the pain of that.
Yeah.
Pinky, are there any, tools or technology that your team is, encountering, like that when a client has them in place, like they might get the initial compromise or some things that are helping them alleviate that breach much quicker, get to the root of it, resolve it much quicker, some things that could be helpful, like if someone's looking for how can I kind of help step up my program, my protection services, and know it's going to have an impact on how quickly we can respond to an incident.
Yeah, definitely. And so, it's usually a layered approach, right? Like not one tool is going to do it for you. But if you have a pretty good EDR tool in place, right? And realistically, all the big players are pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. I know like CrowdStrike had some issues this year, but they fixed that. And they're fine. But yeah, all the big players are pretty good there. I'll be honest with you, I can't speak to Carbon Black anymore because they shut the door on their IR program. So I'm not trying to throw too much shade at them, but a little bit because it's a nice tool and it was nice to use it. But hey, we're using Sentinel-1 now for cases and it works great. Yeah, any of the major players in the EDR tools are great there. You're going to get some good alerts there. Most of them have some type of like XDR or I hate the acronyms. Most of them have some sort of extended thing that they can look at.
I think to me, one of the big features I look for is that ability to quarantine a device. Right? Yeah. Does it have that ability to shut off the network access but still see what's happening?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's massive, right? We don't want to power down devices. We can disconnect them from the network to preserve memory artifacts, but then I can't investigate it, so it's a tricky spot. So yeah, those quarantine things are great. Anything that has the quarantine is going to be really helpful. test it, make sure it actually works, but it is really helpful. But then on top of like a good EDR there, if you have some sort of SIEM or managed detection service, somebody that's looking at these things for you, that's always really helpful too. I think there's, MDR is a bit of a buzzword, but if you vet them out and you really talk to them, a lot of those groups have some really, really good methodologies for that. So they'll take the 4 billion events you're getting a day, filter those down to the, 400,000 that actually might be something, and then filter them further to get down to the 40 that somebody needs to look at, and then let somebody take a look at them. And they do that pretty quickly. I mean, relatively, right? I mean, it's still hours usually, but they're really good. Those are great. Having something to kind of see that, because like we're talking about here, a lot of what we're seeing is sort of legitimate access. It's through a VPN, it's through something normal. I'll say not legitimate, but normal. So having those things in place is really huge. It really gets ahead of it, to kind of answer the question there.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think, when you're looking at, even if you do it internally, but especially with an MDR solution, the kind of the big metrics is that mean time to detect and mean time to recover or repair or whatever however you say it, right? So how quickly are you going to detect something after it happens, and how long does it take to fix? Yeah. And so asking those questions is really going to be a very important thing when you compare these managed solutions, because like you said, they're all going to do it slightly differently, but at the end of the day, it's probably 90% the same approach. It's that last 10% that's going to change. What tools are they using? How are they filtering? What do they have in place?
Yeah. And what can they see is a big one too, right? I mean, a lot of times it sees everything, and then we get into an investigation. We find out, it was seeing, workstation logs, but it wasn't seeing server logs, or it was seeing server logs and not seeing firewall logs, and, things like that. So
missing entire segments of the network and having a high level question why they're paying 6 figures for a solution that doesn't work. I think you know where I'm going with that one. Yeah,
absolutely. And then beyond that too, like, look at these things and test them from time to time, right? Try to do a little spot check and see if you are actually getting firewall logs. We ran into one this like late summer, where they had a really good system in place, and it was, everything it should be, but something had gone wrong with one of the firewalls, the primary firewall, that handled remote access and everything. Mm-hmm. And it looked like it was still reporting in, but it just wasn't sending data over. And so we started to need firewall logs to trace something down. And they're like, yeah, sure, we have those. So they started pulling them, and I would get I think it was 200 megs of data for a 15-day span or something like that. There's no way. There's no way if that's just a gas station, that that's not even a number. This was definitely not a gas station. But they should have been looking at, terabyte or 2 a day, and they were getting nothing.
Yeah.
And so come to find out, it had just sort of flaked out, and I think they essentially rebooted the firewall and started working again. But then all that data is gone. So you're kind of in a bad spot. So I always tell people make sure you know what you're getting, and then also test it to make sure that you're still getting it, periodically. Set up honestly a monthly check would be best. I would lean toward weekly, but as a former IT guy, I'm like, I hate to put too many things on people, but yeah.
Monthly should be pretty good.
Yeah. And you could, depending on your SIEM or, MDR, you could potentially, that's where we baseline, right? All of a sudden, I've been getting a terabyte a day, and I'm now getting 20 megabytes a day. That's an anomaly that should be detected.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, 100%. And kind of talking on the anomaly side of things too, because I don't want to just only focus on the internal compromise and the ransomware, because email's still, not even just email, but M365, your cloud platforms for things like that are still huge targets. So having some, if you have a SIEM or an MDR or something that takes that data in as well is great. Because, we all like to connect things, and a lot of times we have our M365 accounts running our VPN accounts, and it's all part of the same Active Directory and things like that. So that can sometimes be a really early indicator is you pick up on one of those like Evil Jinx attacks or something like that occurring. You can sometimes get ahead of that based on that detection from the cloud system before they sort of move internally with that. And so that's a good spot. Like Brad mentioned too, the conditional access is huge. I mean, if you're not using conditional access, start using conditional access. Even if you have to go really broad with it at first, go broad with it and then start tightening it up. You just start working with that. It's massive.
And just for anybody that is not familiar, Evil Jinx is basically a man-in-the-middle attack, correct?
Yeah. I prefer to call them a token theft attack, but because that's really what it is. And Evil Jinx is sort of the brand name, right? It's the Kleenex. So what it does is it's generally a phishing email, sends you off to a login prompt. That login prompt looks super legitimate. And if you put your credentials in, it passes those credentials on over to Microsoft. Asks you for multi-factor. If you're using a code or whatever, it's going to ask you for that. You drop that in, still sends it over to Microsoft. And a lot of times you'll just end up in your Microsoft mailbox and you'll never know that anything went wrong. But what they're doing is, this is where the man in the middle part comes in, is that they're proxying that connection over Microsoft. And so when Microsoft sends back that fully formed authentication token, the attacker captures it. And once they have that, they can log in as you until that expires. And the expiration, I think by default is it's either 7 or 30 days. It's not short. And so whenever you have one of those attacks, you definitely want to reset the username and password as always, but make sure you're ending active sessions as well, because that invalidates that token. But yeah, you can use those, and if your VPN is tied in with that as well, they can pass that across and connect their VPN, same privileges as that user would have, things like that. So it's a pretty rough one, and it's for email attacks. It's all we see now. I mean, we probably saw 1 or 2 last year that were not one of those token theft attacks. And even then, it was probably just because they didn't have a multi-factor. It was just still a credential harvesting. But yeah, those are really good early indicators. It's one of the questions we ask when we're triaging. Somebody says we had an email compromise. We start asking that question of, okay, is this tied into your anything else, VPN or anything like that? And start kind of walking down that path, because we've seen them progress in that path quite a bit. Because again, it's an easy way in.
Were there any breaches or even partial incidents that kind of were surprising or new to you guys this year?
We did, and I do not have the details because this happened while I was out a couple weeks ago, but we did have a new attack that was using AI, because that's always the question, is like, how is AI being used in attacks? It was really just in kind of how it was crafted and things like that, which is still what we expect.
Yeah.
We saw that. I do think this year was the first year where we saw one that was purely extortion, like we mentioned earlier.
Right.
That's the bigger ones. I'm trying to think. I'm scrolling through my list here as I'm talking to see if there were any of these that catch my eye. It still is a lot. So I always say it seems like a lot of the same stuff over and over again, but it's it's just a reuse of that, right? I mean, VPN attacks are not new, right. But it just turns out there were a bunch of vulnerabilities this year that made that easier. Things like that. It's been, standard-ish, I'll say. Mm-hmm. The ones that are, the ones that we see a lot of, and again, not new, but kind of that report that Brad was talking about a help desk impersonation. We did see a lot of that this year. And so not totally new, but definitely ramping up the use of that. And it's super effective, right? Because, hey, the help desk is reaching out to me about something, I should respond.
Right.
We did see a lot of that this year, unfortunately. And very few times did I hear about it that it wasn't successful. I mean, I did hear a couple times where, hey, we had somebody fake the help desk and reach out and we didn't respond. So, big win there. But but more often than not, it was successful.
And I assume they're usually crafting those fairly well so that it is tricky for the users to identify that it's malicious, other than the training of, hey, we won't send you this kind of request, is maybe one of the best things.
Yeah, it's it's definitely that. So I mean, that is one spot where we think we're seeing sort of AI make an impact, right? It can sort of craft things in a way that looks a little more human than, or a little more normal, right? We're not seeing the same types of typos and odd grammar where sometimes it's a different language that's, got different syntax rules and things like that.
Right.
We are seeing some of that. We definitely saw a lot of at least on the email side of things, of I'm going to compromise someone in your environment and then use your trust in them to compromise you. So we definitely still see a ton of that, and cross organization as well.
Yeah.
Right? Compromise somebody at your CPA's office and then reach out to tell you that you need to make a tax payment or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And those are tough. I mean, they're pretty realistic and particularly if you've got a lot of samples of, like, so if I'm in a mailbox as an attacker and I can see how you tend to phrase your emails and how you send things, I can make it look really, really close. And our good friend AI can help with that.
That's
where you go. Yeah.
Comes into play. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to see more of that. I mean, that's going to continue. Email is still realistically the easiest target most of the time, and now where things are so interconnected, it's a good juicy target. So
definitely. But yeah, I think that reflects what I've been kind of reading in some of the reports on the year too, is like AI is increasing. It is simplifying attacks and enabling attackers that already know a little bit to do more, or for less educated attackers to do more than they might have been able to without AI. But then it's really high use for social engineering and just, like you said, helping make those emails better, those other social engineering based attacks a little better, a little more polished, a little harder to detect.
Yeah, it's lowering the bar of entry.
Right.
It is.
Yeah,
absolutely. And unfortunately that, I don't want to, I do want to sort of shade at attackers. But like that barrier to entry is lowered a lot over the last few years anyway, with ransomware as a service and phishing as a service and all these things where they just kind of pay for the kit and go. But even now you had to know a little more 3 years ago than you do now.
Right.
And that is what it is. I always like to use the example, like, I'm not a good coder. I can do a few things here and there. But, even I was able to kind of trick ChatGPT into creating ransomware for me, right? I mean, it was a simple one and it would have gotten caught by everything. But I was able to kind of walk it through what I needed and then reassemble the pieces, with a lower knowledge level on that. So I think we're probably going to see a lot of that. I do. Some of that worries me in the more destructive attacks. Like, right now things are so financially motivated. Generally, these attackers are not going to break everything, right? There's going to be a way to get back because they want to get paid. They want you to see that ransom note, things like that. I do worry about the people who are just like, oh yeah, cool, I can do this with AI. Let me just hammer some stuff together, and then they just, destroy environments as opposed to.
That's fair. Yeah, we might get back to a almost point of experimentation with people that don't know a lot, don't need to know a lot, and they do it just for fun because AI helped them do it, and why not give it a try?
So I was just reading an article. There's researchers at Group IB. I'm not sure who that is, but they said that there are vendors selling subscriptions to dark LLMs for $30 a month, and that you can buy a complete synthetic identity kit, including AI-generated faces and voices, for about $5.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of the wild, wild west again.
Yeah. I get nervous. We do the Hacklebox every month, and like, you all are on here, but you all are weekly, right?
Every other week.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of video and voice recordings of all of us out there, and it makes me so nervous.
Yep.
I'm just like, if I ever call you for something, just tell me no. Like, it wasn't me. Like, it was probably not me. So yeah.
Yep.
And I'm not going to be offended if it was me. I get it. So.
It might have been AI, Pinky, so we got to watch out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Definitely. We should probably wrap it up. Thank you so much, Pinky. We'll wrap it up with our expressions of gratitude. Do you want to start us off, Brad?
Yeah. I'll give a shout out to my sister. She got a promotion, so very proud of her. She's
nice.
Well deserved.
Congratulations to her. Let's see. I gotta think. I'm just gonna thank Brad because I did throw out my back officially this morning, despite my wanting to admit that. So I got all the tips from the pro to help recover.
Yeah. That's not the thing I want to be known as a pro of, but yes, fortunately I have experience with it.
I do appreciate the support and the tips, so I'm sure we'll get better throughout the day. How about you, Pinky?
Yeah. I'm gonna give a shout out to Amber here at FRSecure because we just hired a new member of the team. Welcome, Zach. But she made that super easy way, really nice, easy process for us. And so Amber does great things, and I'm not sure she gets the love she deserves. She helps us out a lot. So
yeah,
give her a shout out this week.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for joining us for another Breachmas, and we'll hopefully talk to you sooner than next year. But if not, probably next year.
All right. Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.